Let's talk about the requirements for non-US citizens who are not immigrants. Please take note that non-US citizens who are not immigrants must be fully vaccinated to enter the US. Also, you must comply with the requirements of a fully vaccinated passenger. There are requirements before boarding your flight and the information that you must submit before traveling to the US. So here are the latest requirements. The US Transportation Security Administration has issued an emergency amendment. It is Emergency Amendment 1546-21-02B. It will be effective January 9, 2023 to April 10 of 2023. And this outlines the requirements for proof of being fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Now, who will be affected? The passengers affected are those non-US citizens who are not immigrants. This means that if you are a citizen or a permanent resident, or if you are a valid green card holder, you are not covered by this rule. Now, what does TSA Emergency Amendment means? Who is a covered individual? A covered individual is a non-US citizen who is a non-immigrant. So if you're visiting the US on a tourist visa, you are actually covered by this rule. This means that the foreign air carrier must require that each covered individual, prior to boarding a flight to the US, has presented paper or digital documentation of proof of being fully vaccinated, and you must provide personal identifiers and must match your travel document and your COVID-19 vaccination. Also, if you are exempted, you must present documentation proving that you are an accepted covered individual. Another requirement is that the carrier must require that each covered individual must provide an attestation that is completed in compliance with the CDC orders. So you must complete the CDC attestation form. The carrier will deny boarding for any covered individual, including those exempted, without confirming the documentation. So you must provide the proper documentation for proof of vaccination, and also if you are exempted, you must also provide documentation. The foreign air carrier will retain a copy of the attestation for each covered individual for no less than 2 years. And this copy of the attestation will be provided to the Department of Homeland Security or CDC upon request. There are 3 classifications of passengers going to the US. The first classification are US citizens and permanent residents. The second classification of passengers are immigrants, or those migrating to the US. The third classification of passengers are non-US citizens who are not immigrants. The new requirements for air passengers 2 years of age and older traveling to the United States from China, Hong Kong, or Macau, and those traveling from Seoul, Toronto, and Vancouver who have been in China, Hong Kong, or Macau in the past 10 days will now need a negative test before traveling to the US. So make sure that you have your testing requirement before flying. If you are coming from China, Hong Kong, or Macau, you must have a negative COVID-19 test result no more than 2 days before your flight departs. Also, this is regardless of citizenship or vaccination status. So this applies to all US citizens and permanent residents and all non-US citizens. You will need the COVID-19 viral test no more than 2 days before your flight, and you must show your negative result to the airline before you board your flight. So this is applicable if you are traveling to the US from Incheon Airport, Toronto Pearson, and Vancouver International Airport. Travelers from Seoul, Toronto, and Vancouver who have been in China, Hong Kong, or Macau in the past 10 days must have a negative COVID-19 test result no more than 2 days before flight, and this is regardless of citizenship or vaccination status. Those who had COVID-19 in the 90 days before their travel to the United States can instead show documentation of recovery from COVID-19. If you recently recovered from COVID-19, you may instead travel with one of the following forms of documentation. Either your positive COVID-19 viral test result on a sample taken more than 10 days but fewer than 91 days before your flight, or positive COVID-19 viral test result on a sample taken 10 days or fewer days before your flight, plus a letter from a licensed healthcare stating that your COVID-19 symptoms started more than 10 days before your flight. So let's talk about the 2 days instead of the 48 hours. So what is considered 2 days? The 2-day period is 2 calendar days before the flight's departure. So there's more flexibility to the air passenger and aircraft operator. For example, if your flight is at 1 p.m. on a Friday, you could board with a negative test that was taken anytime on the prior Wednesday. There are also rules for delays and short trips. If a trip is shorter than 2 days, a viral test taken in the United States can be used to fulfill the requirements, as long as the specimen was taken no more than 2 days before your return flight to the U.S. departs. If the return travel is delayed longer than 2 days after the test, you will need to be retested before your flight or before your return flight. This means that you don't need negative test if you transited through an airport in China, Hong Kong, or Macau en route to the United States from another country, or if you spent less than 24 hours in China, Hong Kong, or Macau. I'm going to talk about first the requirements for U.S. citizens and permanent residents. Here are the requirements. First, you will be required to provide your contact information to the airline within 72 hours before your flight. For U.S. citizens traveling back to the U.S., you don't need to comply with a 6-month validity of U.S. passports. For green card holders, you must present your foreign passport that is valid for at least 6 months and your green card or permanent resident card. U.S. citizens and permanent residents are exempt from the COVID-19 vaccine requirement. This means that you can travel back to the U.S. without being fully vaccinated. In addition, U.S. citizens and permanent residents are not required to fill out the CDC attestation form. Let's talk about the requirements for immigrants. These are passengers who are migrating to the U.S. Here are the requirements. Foreign passport that is valid for 6 months, valid visa, CDC attestation form, check the latest requirements, customs declaration form, and then arrival card. All immigrants to the U.S. must provide contact information to the airlines, which will be collected within 72 hours of the flight's departure. Let's talk about the CDC attestation form. Who are required to fill out the CDC attestation form? All non-U.S. citizens who are not immigrants are required to fill out the CDC attestation form. If you have any other questions or comments, please post them down below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Again, thank you guys for supporting my channel, and if you haven't liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. I always welcome new subscribers. Thank you guys for watching. I hope everyone is staying safe and have a great day.